You're listening to Affected by Altitude, a Colorado Rockies podcast for and by Rockies fans on Rocky Mountain Rooftop. Thank you for joining us as we discuss all things baseball and Colorado Rockies. Hello and welcome to Affected by Altitude, the Colorado Rockies podcast for Rocky Mountain Rooftop, a proud affiliate of the Fans First Sports Network. I'm your host, Evan Lang, and with me, as always, is Skyler Timmons.
I don't have to do the show by myself this week.
Yeah, I expected to be gone for like a week, not 3 weeks or more. Went on vacation and then came back extremely sick. You can probably hear it in my voice a little bit, but compared to last week, I sound so much better. So we're back. We're back in the saddle, or I'm back in the saddle, rather.
Yeah. We tried to have you on last week, but you just kept holding up pieces of paper up towards the screen, and nope, that doesn't work for an audio format.
It worked for the YouTubers, but we ended up scrapping the episode.
He just kept saying and calling me incredibly offensive things.
He
called me ugly.
I was also randomly gesticulating. I don't know sign language, so just randomly moving around.
The worst game of charades we've ever done.
So one thing before we get started, in case you weren't aware, we do have a t-shirt shop where we are selling a t-shirt, our That's Baseball design, that is inspired by our very own Harry Ralston Black, manager of the Colorado Rockies. You can get that over at rocky-mountain-rooftop at .spreadshirt.com. Every shirt purchase, part of the proceeds goes to helping support the show. But honestly, we might as well just go ahead and get started here. One of the big things that's been going on recently is that Kris Bryant is back on the injured list again, which is just real unfortunate because he had been playing a decent amount this year.
Mm-hmm.
He played 24 games in May. I think he's played a large portion of the game so far this season, but he's on the injured list again, and we have to look at just how much time he spent on the injured list as a Rocky now, where he only played 42 games last year, and now he's on the injured list again, and we're not sure when he's going to be back. But in addition to that, we have the somewhat concerning issue of just his complete lack of power that he's been hitting for this year. He has a slugging percentage of .374 right now, through 50 games played. He does have 5 home runs, but they've been pretty few and far between.
Mm-hmm.
And it's been he has these very long stretches where he's not hitting them. And so, Skyler, what's to be done about Kris Bryant here? Because the Rockies, as we're all aware, we're paying him a lot of money.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, a little too much money for a lot of people's tastes. Yeah, it's concerning he's been generally healthy this year. No, for the most part, and he just took a foul ball off his foot, and I'm sure they just took the chance maybe to do a mental reset for him. That left heel bruise, I think, is what he's on the injured list for. So maybe the Rockies are looking at that like, Kris, we're just going to give you a week and a half off, and just to mental reset physically and make sure you're doing okay. They're going to be cautious with any sort of injury for him. But it's a big dilemma with Kris Bryant, where he's in the second year of this huge contract we signed him to. He's supposed to be this marquee player that the Rockies were hoping for, that he was going to put up 20 to 25 home runs a year, drive in 80 to 90 RBIs, have a high batting average, all this stuff. And it's just not there. And yeah, he's played 50 games this year. So he's played all but 10 of the Rockies games this year, which, before he went on the injured list, he'd played him the majority of them, almost all of them, which is a good sign. And in the month of April, he had a good month. I think we talked about that. Where now, if not for Elias Diaz's April, he probably wouldn't have been our player of the month in some aspects. But yeah, like you said, the power is just not there. He's not the Kris Bryant the Rockies signed up for. He is hitting line drives. Hey, that's great. But there's no power. They're nothing but singles, where the majority of his hits, I think all but 11 of them, are for just a single. And then there's the 6 doubles, 5 home runs. So 11 extra base hits through 50 games is not a good look for Kris Bryant. And the power's just not there. And that's kind of been the concerning thing, I think, for most everybody. We'll take singles, and we love that he would get hits and get on base. He doesn't strike out a whole ton. He draws his walks, so those levels are pretty good. He hits line drives, which is pretty good. He's at the highest line drive rate of his career right now. But everything else is just not doing anything, where he's hitting the ball the weakest he ever has in his career. It's the lowest hard hit rate of his career, or around at the bottom of his career. So the power's not there, but some other things are. But when you pay a guy 7 years, $182 million, you're expecting more dingers and doubles out of that guy. And we're just not getting it. We're just not getting it. I think he's on pace for, what is it, like 14 home runs this season and maybe 20 doubles, which are well below his like career averages.
Yeah, it's not a lot. And coming into the month of June here, he had 2 home runs in May, which fine. But the big issue was his last home run was on May 7th. And he has these long, hot and cold stretches. And, that's something that's affecting a lot of Rockies hitters.
Mm-hmm.
Ryan McMahon, who we'll talk about in a minute, went like 103 at-bats in between home runs. But with Kris Bryant, when you're spending this much money on him to be your sort of star player, and he's playing right field or DH, and he's not slugging. He's got that OPS that's well under 800. He's got an OPS this season of 720, which is not amazing. And then you combine that with the fact that he's been pretty defensively terrible as a right fielder.
Mm-hmm.
He has a -6 defensive runs saved this year in right field. When you're paying him this much, 7 years, $182 million, that's just, you need a lot more from that guy. And, I've said I can deal with Kris Bryant being a high on base percentage guy, and that's what he has been, but you don't want that to be shallow, because who else we've had who have been high on base percentage guys are guys like Jose Iglesias last year and Jonathan Daza. And those are guys who you're not paying tons of money every season to, versus KB. He's on this massive contract. We need him to be more than just an average and on base guy. That slugging needs to go up. He needs to be driving in more runs. He needs to be a little bit more of a heavy contributor here. He's got under 20 RBIs. He's got less RBIs than CJ Cron, who hasn't played in like 2+ weeks, than Jurickson Profar. He has
about the same as Harold Castro.
Yeah. And Harold Castro is on a veteran minimum deal. So that's not, it's just frustrating to watch, especially when we have right now with KB on the injured list, we have guys like Nolan Jones playing right field, and he's been pretty solid. And we've got other guys up and around who, the rookies, and we'll talk about them later, who are starting to get the job done. And, KB with this gigantic immovable contract and the injuries, and I'll say for the injuries this year, you mentioned he's played 50 games. And, he's one of only 6 Rockies players who have played 50 or more games so far this season. So the injuries themselves are not really that big of a problem this year. But you can't help but think, well, he spent pretty much all year last year on the IL. He's on the IL again, and he just hasn't been as big of a contributor as you want him to be.
Yeah, absolutely. Because when you're paying a guy that much, you need more out of him. And the less he does on this contract, the less home runs and like extra base hits. Like, we'll just drop it down. Aside from home runs, just extra base hits in general. A big contributor in that lineup, getting on base, being an offensive threat in that lineup. The less he does that, the worse and more perplexing why the Rockies gave him this contract in the first place becomes more and more apparent. Because like you mentioned, there's young guys that they have that he's technically kind of blocking that are making the most of their opportunity. Nolan Jones, he plays a mean right field. He's a pretty good defender, and he's learning some other positions. Eleris Montero, he's got that power bat. The less Bryant does, the more perplexing of why is he here in Colorado? And when you're a superstar, I was watching MLB Network the other day, and they brought up this conversation of signing these superstars on these mega deals, and you're not just buying the player, you're buying the person. Guy to expect to be a huge veteran leader, to be a leader in the community, and doing all this stuff. And so if I'm sure Brian's doing a lot of that other stuff, community is charity work, working with guys in the clubhouse, kind of being that silent leader, but he's still got to complement that with elite production on the field, and we're just not getting that. And I think a lot of it boils down to, this is the same with Ryan McMahon, where some of the things they do, I think they're just some minor tweaks away from going on those big hot streaks. And for Kris Bryant, it's figuring out how he can tap back into that power, hit the ball harder. Because if you look at a spray chart, everything he hits, it's like a pull ball through the left side, just grounders into left field. I think half of his doubles have come from a rip down the third base line.
And half of his doubles isn't even that many doubles.
Yeah.
He just has 6 on the year so far, and he only had 2 in the entire month of May.
Yeah. And you look at his flyouts, a ball that it's hit in the air, he doesn't really have any hits that are landing anywhere close to the warning track in the gaps. So if you think it just a general baseball field in the gaps, specifically even at Coors Field, if he does hit a line drive into the gap, it's getting cut off before it can even roll to the wall. Or if he hits a ball in the air, it's not traveling that far. And Kris Bryant's a good hitter. And we know he's a good hitter. We know what he can provide. And so I think it's going to come down to what can he work with, Bam Bam Mullins and the hitting coach staff, of how can they get him where he's hitting the ball consistently and hard, hitting it with some authority, because he's got quick hands, he's got a good stance. And I wrote about this in an article looking at StatCast. I think 60% of his home runs, so 60% of those 5 home runs he has, have been classified as no doubters. So when he connects and it taps into that power, he crushes balls. There's no doubt that they go out. He's just not doing it consistently enough, and that's what's worrisome, because he's only getting older. I know this is happening for a 32-year-old, 33-year-old. This is happening
31 and a half.
Yeah, and this is happening in year 2 of a 7-year deal, and he's already not hitting for power at this rate. It's not looking good.
Yeah, when your guy is in year 2 of a 7-year deal and is worth negative 0.4 RWAR,
it's not good, Cotton.
It's a bold strategy.
Yeah, it's not going to work. And hopefully, Bam Bam Mullins, because I still believe in Kris Bryant. We know his pedigree and what he can do, and there's glimpses that we've seen of that this year. When he's on and getting on base and making solid contact, he's an elite hitter. And just watching his mechanics and everything, it's there. There's probably just some tampering they need to do to get him back to where he was. 2021 form, 2020, 2019 form. We're never going to get MVP Kris Bryant ever again.
Yeah, that's 2016. Kris Bryant is well in the past.
Long gone.
But you at least want him to have a positive wins above replacement.
Mm-hmm.
For example, Brenton Doyle has 0.5 right now.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, it's just rough because, you know, I like KB and I liked the signing when we brought him in. I thought it was a really good move to go ahead and bring him on in. But right now, we just need him to deliver more than he actually is.
Yeah, and that's going to come down. That's going to show, you know, outside of KB, of what is the Rockies organization capable of, because they need to prove themselves that we can bring players in and make them better, instead of sometimes on the opposite end with especially these big free agent position players they've brought in. The last few haven't panned out really. Ian Desmond, that fizzled out pretty quick. Daniel Murphy, that fizzled out really quick. Kris Bryant, it's not looking great at the beginning here. So they need to prove that we can bring in even these aged veterans and we can make them better, or we've evaluated guys knowing that they can get better, instead of, well, he was an MVP in 2016. Let's sign him.
What's funny is that the two cheapest ones are two of the better performing ones in Jose Iglesias and Harold Castro, both who, you know, Jose Iglesias had a pretty solid season with the Rockies last year, ended up hitting around 300. And then, you know, Harold Castro has really been playing more and more second base for the Rockies and is hitting fairly well, all things considered. His, you know, he definitely has work to do. He's very similar to how Jose Iglesias was hitting for us last year. But it's just funny when, you know, two of the best, you know, veterans that you bring in are the guys that are on the cheapest deals.
Yeah. And the pure thing, and I think that comes down to the Rockies evaluations and other stuff we talked about, front office stuff, the dynamics in there. Just, I don't know what's happening up there with a lot of stuff, but it's just perplexing that they just keep missing on these big free agent contracts with position players, when, man, you used to have a lot better options that were in-house. But who knows? But we still believe in KB, and hopefully you can figure it out.
Yeah. You know, all is not lost, and there's still plenty of season once he gets back from his injury to turn it around. And I think it's definitely something he can do. But if we're still saying everything that we're saying at the end of the season, that's when we have got a for sure problem on our hands.
Because if he can get to that 14 projected home runs, like, that'll be better than nothing. But I need him to get to double-digit home runs. I need him to have a big month. You know, if he can come back and have at least like one huge month, especially near the end of the season, like you're saying, and show signs of he's getting better and he's getting back into some form, feels healthy, and he's hitting dingers, he's driving in runs, that'll be better. But if he comes back and he's still just plopping singles everywhere, that's when you start getting a little worried at the end of the season. Like, 5 more years of this?
That's when you've got to start looking at, all right, now how do we get out of this contract?
Yeah, and that's the worrisome part, is like, there's really no way to move this. The other day I was like, man, they should have put an opt-out. No, he wouldn't have taken that opt-out with the way he's performing. A team opt-out would have been nice.
Yeah, it's tough. But, you know, at the end of the day, like we said, we've got time. He's got time. It's, if we're going into year 3 and this is still a problem, then we've got a big issue. But, you know, it's only just now June. And sometimes guys take a minute to figure it out. Guys like Ryan McMahon, who we will talk about right after this really quick ad break.
Woo!
Welcome back to Affected by Altitude. I'm Evan Lang, and with me is Skyler Timmons, and we're going to talk about the really nice, you know, last week or so that Ryan McMahon has had. Ryan McMahon didn't really get himself a great start to the season, but over the last, week and a half, 2 weeks, he's really just been completely locked in. Had a really good month of May, and then especially over the last 2 weeks has been really good. And we mentioned it in the first segment where he went like 103 at bats without a home run, and then he finally uncorked one, and he's been a lot more like the hitter that we know he can be after that. We look at his last 10 games going back to May 25th, and he has an OPS of 1.556. So he's slashing 487, 556, 1,000 with 5 home runs and 15 RBIs, a triple, and 3 doubles. He has looked fantastic at the plate, and that's not even to mention how he's been once moved back to third base, his usual incredible self as a defender. He's been absolutely fantastic at third base, to the point where, as much as it was good that Alauris Montero was getting an opportunity at the beginning of the season, this really is where he belongs.
Yeah, he's figuring it out. I think he had a rough month of May, but he kind of salvaged it with that last week and a half. That last week, I think it was about May 25th against Miami. He goes 2 for 3. Yeah, 2 for 3, a couple of walks, and pretty good. And then then the Mets series comes in, and he uncorks a home run in 3 straight games. And then, what was it, 4 straight games? Then they went to Arizona, and he hits one in the first game there. So he figured something out, and I think a lot of it was tinkering with Bam Bam Mullins and the coaching staff to tinker with his swing a little bit, to where he's getting to the baseball and figuring out his swing where he's actually getting to the baseball and hit it. Because when Ryan McMahon makes contact, dude's smoking the ball. And I talked about this last week in the solo episode, and it just so happened that the episode came out right after he had his big weekend, or after I was talking about where he was struggling. But his results are now turning in his favor. There's probably some luck involved, just the way baseball goes, where he's just getting a little bit more lucky with where his balls are going. But he's figured something out, I think, where you can watch him. His swing seems a little quicker, a little more direct to the ball, because that's what I think rival executive scouts that Patrick Saunders kept reporting on, that some other scout their evaluation of him was that he's got quick hands, but he's got this long loopy swing that's making him late on everything. That's why he's fouling off so many baseballs, why he would make contact. It'd kind of be a sharp liner into the ground towards somebody, or he just straight up strike out because he's whiffing. So yeah, I think he shortened things up, and it's working out.
Yeah, we had mentioned it a couple weeks ago, but he just had this colossal hole in his swing where he wasn't like chasing pitches out of the zone, but he was striking out a lot on pitches in the zone where he just wasn't making contact. And you're right in that his swing looks so much better. And you look at the beginning of May through May 24th, so right before he sort of started popping off, he was hitting 186, 269, 286. No home runs. He had gone pretty much the entire month of May up to that point without a home run. And he had struck out 23 times to 8 walks. And it's tough because there were definitely adjustments he needed to make, and I'm glad that he's finally made them. But no, he's in the second year of this big contract extension. And last year he definitely underperformed, and this year he had just been off to a tough start, and that's got to put a lot of pressure on you, because in addition to guys like Chuck, Ryan McMahon is really one of the on-field captains of this team, where he is the veteran leadership at this point. And when you're struggling like that, it's really hard to keep on top of that kind of thing and inspire others, especially all the rookies who are on the team right now. And so I'm really happy to be watching him turn it around, and I'm hoping that he can keep this momentum going throughout the rest of the season, because as we know, he's an excellent defender, and he has such potential in that bat of his that he's just never really fully tapped into. And if this can be the point where he's finally fully tapping into that offensive potential, then he can be a truly special player. He can be an all-star. He can be a winner. And that's what I want for him.
Yeah, and I think the big thing for him is understanding who he is and just kind of normalizing things, where I think the goal, especially for Ryan McMahon, is to just maintain consistency, where he doesn't go into those huge, gigantic slumps, 103 some odd bats without a home run, and then pops off a couple and is hot for a week, and then goes cold for another month. So it's finding that consistency in his approach, and early signs, hopefully he can keep it up, because he's got that average up pretty nicely, and that OPS and everything. And it's just that evidence of, okay, being humble enough to take what the coaches are telling you and implementing that, and realizing that there were things that needed to change, instead of just the excuse of, I'm just not performing well, I need to execute better. What does that even mean? Whenever they say that, I always wonder, like, what does it mean to execute better? You're swinging a bat at a ball, and now he's figuring out some things, which is good signs. And yeah, we've got him for the long run, and he's got to start performing. And now as he starts to show better hints of that, continual improvement, same as with Kris Bryant. Once they can show some improvement, those deals look a lot better, and you can stomach them a lot better.
Yeah, so it's always the consistency that matters the most. Like, it's the same issue that we've had with CJ Cron since last year's All-Star break, where he has these wild hot and cold streaks, or Elias Diaz over the last 2 years, where he starts the season just ice cold, and then eventually turns it on, or in the case of last year, really never really got to the point where he needed to be. But then, of course, this year he's been fantastic. And we need Ryan to be consistent, because his glove is consistent, but we need his bat to be consistent. He is a good player, but to be the best player that he can be, consistency is key.
Yeah, he's kind of in a vein following the trajectory of Matt Chapman. If you've kind of followed him, he went over to Toronto, and the defense was still good, but his bat was just horrendous in the average department. But he'd get on a hot power streak and be knocking dingers. He's having a pretty good year this year, but Matt Chapman's average has never been that good as an on-base guy, but he's got the power potential. And he's setting himself up for a nice payday this year. But it's kind of that same vein of, well, Ryan McMahon don't necessarily want to follow the trajectory of Matt Chapman, both Gold Glove caliber players with power potential, but we need Mac to get a little bit more consistency with the bat, where he's more well-rounded instead of just the all-or-nothing strikeout or home run type of guy.
Yeah, and then, of course, as we are recording this, Ryan McMahon is 0 for 4 with 3 strikeouts today against the Kansas City Royals. And so we need to hope that he's not going into a cold streak or anything like that, because we need him to be one of the leaders on this offense. And of course, the offense today, not getting it done at all. Poor Kyle Freeland, again, with 0 runs of support, which has been an ongoing theme for his road starts. But you just have to hope that after the day off tomorrow, Ryan McMahon's going to come back out and go, okay, that was the fluke instead of that is the norm.
Yeah. there's a whole lot of problems with that offense that we could dive into, but we won't today. But yeah, McMahon is one of those guys. He's got to figure out to take charge of that lineup, because he's batting 3-hole now for the time being. So,
you know who's not been a problem, though? Nolan Jones.
I was going to say Profar.
Profar too, but we have a lot of kids on this team right now who are getting the job done, and Nolan Jones is really sort of leading the charge over the last week, where Nolan Jones, he had his first call up and just they didn't play him. They did that infuriating thing over that Seattle series where he sat on the bench the entire time.
I'm sure you got to see the Space Needle. Some nice dinner.
I mean, Seattle's a nice city, but I think I'd much rather be playing, and he's really making the most of this new opportunity. So he's started a bunch of games as well. He got called up to, I think it was May 26th. He was called back up, and he started 8 games since then. So in the last week and a half, he started 8 games. He started both at first place and in right field, and he's been hitting really, really well. Hitting in today's game, he's got 2 pretty crisp singles. He got his first home run against the Arizona Diamondbacks, something that I hope we can look forward to many, many more of. And right now he's hitting 345 with an OPS of 919. He's definitely been a nice shot in the arm of youth that a lot of the younger guys have really been. You've got Nolan Jones, you've got Ezequiel Tovar, who's really, really started to turn it on for his rookie campaign, and Brenton Doyle, who, as I mentioned before, has a 0.5 wins above replacement per Baseball Reference right now. And then Elias Montero is finally back up with the team. And so, Skyler, what are your thoughts on sort of the youth movement where the kids are finally playing? They're playing regularly.
Yeah, it's one of two things. It's good to see them playing. It's also just frustrating of the only reason that they are playing right now, aside from like Ezequiel Tovar and Brenton Doyle, the only reason that Nolan Jones and Montero are getting playing time is simply because of injuries. Otherwise, they'd still be down in AAA. Albuquerque, more than likely, from what it seems like. But it's good to see them playing, learning, and growing. There's still some things you look at. You're like, man, this is the reason he was sent down in the first place, and we need him to figure it. The team needs to figure out how to help him with this. It was Nolan Jones. Does well, I think, one walk coming into today's game and 10 strikeouts here on Sunday. So there's still that strikeout problem for him, but he's offsetting that with just making contact, getting hits. He has a little handful of doubles, the home run. It's good to see them learning and growing, and he's learning a position at first base. Hasn't been horrendous there, but he's learning it, showing his defensive capabilities. So it's nice to see them at least getting the chance to grow without that added pressure on them. But it still goes back to what we were talking about earlier. The organization has to prove that they can make their players better, position players better, and not just expect them to figure it out on their own, but because these guys all have potential, and we need the organization needs to embrace them and turn their weaknesses into strengths and make their strengths even stronger. So hopefully they can do that, because these guys have the potential. It's good to see them making the most of their opportunities now as rookies and young players, because we need them. We need them.
Definitely. And, Jones, I think, you can look at his strikeouts and stuff and be like, well, yeah, that's kind of a problem. But his Rockies debut on the field was May 26th. He's played about a week and a half with the actual team. So you usually need a little bit of time to find some rhythm. And the fact that he is hitting as well as he is right now is something I am perfectly satisfied with. The real standout to me is, Brenton Doyle, who's been an immediate impact to this team, and then Ezequiel Tovar, who's really, really starting to figure it out. In April and early May, his bat especially was not quite there yet. He was still struggling against major league hitting. but he's pulled his average up to the mid 200s. His on base percentage is something that definitely needs work, but what he is providing that is valuable is that he's driving in runs. He has 23 RBIs on the season, which is up there for one of the best marks on the team. He's tied with Jurickson Profar for fourth right now, which does also say a lot about this team, that we're not getting nearly enough RBIs. But the fact that this rookie's making a big impact and is finally starting to make an impact with his bat, because we knew his glove was there. His glove's been pretty good all year, and has been especially good recently, where he is the fourth best defensive shortstop right now in all of baseball with 6 defensive runs saved. That's fantastic for a rookie.
Yeah, we've been toting on him. I think like most of the month of May, almost every episode is about Brenton Doyle and Ezequiel Tovar. And it's good to see them that they've committed to those guys fully, and they're getting the opportunity to shine and grow and figure some things out. In the midst of the season, even when Tovar was struggling, or even Doyle was kind of struggling, they kept him in there. One, because those guys played great defense, and then just kind of let them figure it out offensively. At the bottom of the order, I know people have complained about them hitting in the bottom of the order. That's a good place for them. This first season as rookies, let them figure some things out. There's a little less pressure at the bottom of the lineup, and they're making the most of it by driving in runs and scoring runs. So that's the nice part about all these rookies or the younger guys playing, is when they're getting opportunities, they're making the most of them, regardless of where they are in the lineup. They're getting it done defensively, and then figuring out, working through some things offensively. And that's all you can ask of a rookie.
Yeah, and they add much needed speed to this team. Tovar's finally starting to get stolen bases in as part of his major league portfolio, because he stole a lot of bases in the minors. He's a quick kid, but he really hadn't done much on the base pass. And the Rockies in general haven't really been much to steal bases, but it's been Brenton Doyle especially, and now Ezequiel Tovar getting those steals in.
Yeah.
And then Brenton Doyle, his defense, it says a lot that he is the only member of the Rockies outfield to have a DRS above 0.
Speed helps him with that quite a bit.
He's got the legs for it. And then he uses that speed on the base pass because he is just a machine at stealing bases. He has 8 stolen bases, which is more than any other person on the team, and double that of the next guy up, which is Rymack at 4.
I don't know what to say to that. It's just funny.
we just don't steal bases. I'm pretty sure that we have still some of the fewest stolen bases in the whole league right now.
Got to get on base to steal bases.
Ain't that the truth?
And you got to have some speed, and our team is slower than molasses.
We have some guys that are fairly quick and some guys who are deceptively quick. Ryan McMahon is pretty quick. And I think people don't really think about him as a speedster or having, necessarily quickness, because he's a third baseman. Alan Trejo has also been pretty quick on the base pass. He's got 4 steals this year. But yeah, we don't steal bases as a team. And
maybe Bud Black just hates them because he's a pitcher. And so he's just adverse to to heck with that. I'll let 1 or 2 guys steal, but no.
Yeah, the Rockies have the fewest stolen bases in the league right now at 22. And over a third of that is Brenton Doyle.
Mm-hmm. What was it? Corbin Carroll or whoever for the Diamondbacks says like more than pretty much the entire Rockies almost.
The Arizona Diamondbacks have a ton of stolen bases, and I'm pretty sure that Corbin Carroll had something in the high teens when we were playing them.
He's got like 15 now. 15 plus.
He is so fast to the point where when he is not running or sprinting, it looks weird to me. Like during our series against Diamondbacks, he was just sort of, like mulling around, walking off the diamond. I'm like, he looks like he doesn't know how to walk normally. He looks like he only knows how to run at full speed.
Gotta go fast.
That Diamondbacks, they do go fast. The Rockies got to go faster.
Gotta go faster, faster. Sonic X reference for the kids out there.
I cannot believe how long ago that was. I feel so old now.
Mm-hmm. Good old 4Kids TV on Fox.
Well, before 4Kids TV, it was the Fox box.
It was always constantly changing. Just like when it used to be WB Kids and then WB and then it became CW.
There was no consistency after they shed the Fox Kids moniker.
Mm-hmm.
But we're going to take another quick break here, and when we get back, we have some cleanup to do for the month of May as we head deeper into the month of June here. So stick around, and we'll be right back. Welcome back. Thanks for sticking with us through that ad break. And Skyler, it's the end of May. May is over. You know what that means, right?
Let's see. April showers bring May flowers. What do May flowers bring?
Well, for the Rockies, it's the June swoon.
It's pilgrims, dang it.
What? I don't get that. Is that a reference to something?
The Mayflowers? Mayflowers bring over pilgrims? Got him.
Thanks, everyone, for listening to another episode of Affected by Altitude. You can find me on Twitter.
Just kill the episode now.
We're done.
Heck, we'll do it live.
There. See, Skyler, you're literally killing me here. But no, the end of May means it's time to talk about our players of the month.
Oh. Gotcha.
Yeah. You've done this before. We've been here before.
Just got to be surprised. It's how every episode's got to work.
For those who haven't been here before, basically at the end of every month, we select our May players of the month. That is a position player, a pitcher, and the overall MVP for the month of May. And I think I'll go ahead and start with the player of the month for me. Position player has still got to be Elias Diaz. He has absolutely been the Rockies' most valuable hitter all season, and then he continued that in the month of May, where he has a team-leading OPS in May of 896 with 4 home runs and 16 RBI. That's just one less than the team best that Ryan McMahon had with 17 for the month. And he does not strike out. He only struck out 15 times in the entire month of May while drawing 8 walks. His on-base percentage is .372. He's getting it done with every facet. He's been playing excellent defensive catcher this year, which a big step up. He kind of struggled defensively behind the plate last year, but this year he's been great. And in May especially, he's continued to keep that bat just really hot and been one of the most valuable Rockies at the plate in addition to being on the field. So that's why he's my position player of the month.
Yeah, and I'll jump on into because he's mine as well. It's hard to look at anybody else. There's some honorable mentions, like Randall Grichuk had a good month. Charlie Blackmon had a good month. We talked about Ryan McMahon. But yeah, Diaz is still getting it done on both sides of the ball. Diaz for the All-Star game. Go vote now. Vote. You get 5 votes a day. Do it now.
That means you should be voting for Elias Diaz 5 times.
Go, you should be voting for Elias Diaz. Arnold says so. I turn into Jorgen von Jorgensen or whatever from Fairly Odd Parents.
It was Jorgen von Strangle.
Oh, yeah, that was Timmy Turner. But Elias Diaz, he's getting it done on both sides of the ball. Even in this era of the stolen base now and the bigger bases and a lot more stolen bases, he's probably still among top in the league of cutting down runners. Had a rough time with the Diamondbacks, but who wouldn't because they're a very fast team. But he's getting done on both sides of the ball and is batting cleanup for the Rockies. A little bit more power. And hopefully he can get some more dingers, but yeah, solid pick there for offensive player of the month.
Where it gets a little bit trickier for me is thinking about who the pitcher for the month of May is. In May, some of our guys struggled a little bit more, especially towards the end of the month, than they did in April, especially with what has been a big issue is the overuse of the bullpen, where we had 4 guys that had 10 plus appearances out of the bullpen for the Rockies. Those 4 being Pierce Johnson, Justin Lawrence, Brent Suter, and Jake Bird. Just because of how inconsistent that Rockies rotation has been. It's a tough call because all of those guys have been really valuable, but I think I'm going to go with Jake Bird. Jake Bird has really had a strong May in addition to a strong majority of his season, where he started out strong and then had a little bit of a hiccup in the middle of April, but after that, he's really been one of the best pitchers in the Rockies bullpen. In 13 appearances, he has an ERA of 1.65 over 16 and 1/3 innings. He's only given up 1 home run, and he struck out 16 for a whip of 1.10. Batters are hitting just 203 against him right now. He's been a very good, very reliable reliever for this team.
Yeah, and especially because a lot of those outings, he's called on to mop up a couple of innings, like 2, sometimes even 3 innings. It's been a solid dude out of that bullpen.
Yeah, especially he's one of the most used relievers in the league as a whole. That's the crazy thing for me, is just how often we are using him, and he hasn't really fallen off yet. Yeah, there's a bump in the road every now and then. There always is going to be, but at the end of the day, he's going out there and he's getting it done. And I really like that from him. I liked Jake Bird a lot last year, and I think he had great potential. And he had a little bit of some trouble in spring training with that oblique strain, and where he didn't make the team originally out of spring training, and then ended up, when Daniel Bard got sent onto the IL, he ended up getting the call, and now he's been one of the Rockies' most reliable pitchers, up there with guys like Suter.
Yeah, and him and Justin Lawrence, like it I don't think anybody would get mad even if we just put those 3 as just kind of a conjoined pitcher MVP type of thing for the month, because that bullpen's been solid with how many innings they have to eat up. But just for the sake of variety, because I think we've given Jake Bird a lot of love, I think I was thinking of MVP in terms of like for the player of the month pitching wise in the rotation, where Chase Anderson has come in and just kind of been a nice revelation in that rotation, coming over from the Tampa Bay Rays. Made 3 starts in May, pitched 15 and 2/3 innings, so he was still on kind of a little pitch count, still trying to stretch him out a bit, but posted a 1.72 ERA in the month of May in those 3 starts, 3 runs on 13 hits, 1 home run allowed, 8 strikeouts, 4 walks. Did have a couple of hit by pitches, so he's still fine-tuning that command. But a 1.085 whip, well, in a rotation that has been so just dismantled this season, to have Chase Anderson come in as a veteran from another organization and has pitched perfectly fine at home or on the road. He has been solid, and even his 1 start here in June so far, fantastic. He's done his job and coming over, and so as much love I just kind of give the bullpen at this point, like Jake Bird and them, they're going to kind of get the emeritus status. It's kind of the honorable mention every year, because much like the NBA voters, I can't justify giving it to a guy multiple months in a row again and again.
I think that's totally fair, though, with Chase Anderson, and this is a guy who is several years removed from being a regular rotation guy.
And having success.
And he didn't start this season in the rotation when he was with both the Reds and the Rays at the beginning of the season. He was strictly a bullpen guy, and the Rockies brought him in and started stretching him out. And it's taken a bit. It took 4 games for him to finally get up to 6 innings. But he notched his first quality start here in this series against the Royals, and he's only given up, 1 or 2 runs maximum in every one of his outings so far. And is he probably overperforming right now? Yeah.
Probably.
If you look at his FIP and XFIP, they're considerably higher. But right now, with how much of a funk this Rockies rotation has been in, this rotation has been bad. There's no way around it, where in addition to the injuries, guys are just not getting it done. Some of the fewest strikeouts, some of the fewest innings worked, some of the most runs allowed by a rotation of Major League Baseball. So to have Chase Anderson come in really out of nowhere, and we were all a little worried of like, Chase Anderson are the Rockies going to bring him in and make him start? And they did. But he's been great over his first 4 starts with his team. And in the first 3 starts there in May, where we really needed some consistency out of the rotation, it was Chase Anderson that was providing that.
Yeah. So I don't mention all those because Jake Bird, absolutely perfect pick. He probably would be it. But Chase Anderson needed some love. And in terms of just carrying the team that's needing starting pitching, he's getting it done, which is good to see. And hopefully he can keep it going here in the month of June.
Yeah, it's going to be tough, and the rotation is going to continue to be weird. But hopefully we can just continue to rely on Chase Anderson just for a little bit longer, at least.
He's just got to hold on a little bit longer.
But who would you say your MVP is for the month?
Oh, man. I would say the bullpen, actually. I would break our own rules and just say the bullpen in general, because I kind of want to do that. I'm breaking the rules. I'm saying the bullpen. I came up with the rules. I'm breaking them, Evan.
Except I think that's pretty fair, because if you pull up the bullpen in May, they've been pretty good. Yeah. And unfortunately the ERA for pitching overall for the Rockies is still going to be pretty high. There's not a whole lot we can do about that. But you look at how much that is skewed in between the two. And in May, like I said, we had multiple guys who were 10 plus outings. Daniel Bard as well has made 10 appearances in May and had an ERA of like 0.079 or something. May is the month where this rotation really just completely collapsed. We lost Herman, we lost Senzatela again, we lost Noah Davis, we lost Ryan Feltner. Like
Carl Kaufman didn't pan out. Dinelson Lamet is starting now.
It's the rotation really just collapsed, and the fact that we ended up finishing May not that far below 500, which is, a shock, because this team, with how they were in April, was terrible. It was a terrible team in April. 9 wins in the entire month of April. But then you turn it around and you look at how they did in May, where, in May they went 15-13. That's a huge turnaround in comparison. And so much of that is because the bullpen is coming in and picking up the rotation. And we all know that it's not sustainable how this is operating right now. But right now, the bullpen is the MVP for this team.
Yeah, because even with, you can take out Fernando Abad, you can take him out. Riley Pints, one little outing, and Fernando Abad. Matt Caracity, after his rough first appearance, he's been solid. To end out May. Pierce Johnson has had some hiccups there in the 9th inning, here and there, but still has been fairly somewhat reliable throughout the month. And then the main guys, Jake Bird, Brent Suter, Justin Lawrence, those three at the top have just been mowing guys down, eating a bunch of innings. And then Peter Lambert has shown glimpses in extended, long relief, piggybacking, has shown glimpses of being really good. And I think with as many innings as that bullpen's had to eat this season, specifically in the month of May, after the collapse of that bullpen, this team should be in a much, much worse spot than they are. And it's thanks to that bullpen kind of riding the ship and giving that offense a chance to win some of those games that they found themselves in an early hole. And then bullpen comes in. Oh, they've combined for 5 or 6 innings of 1-run ball. You're like, dang, did we win? No, we lost 3-2.
And for guys like Peter Lambert, with him just eating innings right now, we're just happy to have him on the field after he really hasn't played, because think of how that could have gone. Look at what just happened to Ryan Rollison, where he just got pulled back off the field after being gone for like 2 years with injuries. And there was a lot to be worried about with Lambert, but the fact that he's pitching consistently and he's pitching all right is something to be really happy about. And then you have Matt Caracidi, who, that's a heck of a comeback story right there, where he hadn't pitched in the major league since 2019. He had Tommy John last year, and his first outing against a really tough Texas Rangers squad, he got blown up. All of our pitchers did. The Rangers kicked us in the teeth. But then since that outing, he's made 4 appearances, 8 2/3 innings, 1 walk, 4 strikeouts, no earned runs, with a batting average against for opponents of 133. Like, Caraciti's been good. And it's another one of those things where, is he probably overperforming right now? Maybe, but he's being one of 2 quality innings eating guys in a bullpen that's being asked to do a lot. And a lot of guys are doing extra work. Brent Suter and Jake Bird frequently working extra innings. Justin Lawrence frequently having to work a little bit more than 1 inning. So to have guys like Lambert and Caraciti, who are going to be able to eat 2-3 innings of work after the rotation guy makes their exit, is so important.
Or when they come in, guys on base, they need to shut out an inning to get an out, and then have to pitch 1 more inning. They're carrying the team, which team can never find balance, where the 1 year where the bullpen's really good, everything else is terrible. After years of the bullpen being terrible and everything else is fairly decent. Anyways, so yeah, I think what are we in agreement? We're breaking the rules and calling the bullpen MVP.
I think so. I think the situation that we've had specifically calls for the rules to be broken at this point.
Indeed.
Because when the rotation is as beleaguered and broken and battered as it is right now, we're basically calling anybody off the street. Hey, can you start?
Yeah.
Can you throw 4 innings, please?
And Elias Diaz isn't the reason they're 15-13 on the month. No, yeah. He's the best offensive player, but he's not the reason they had a much better month. Now, a big part of it, but the Rockies were carried by that bullpen, and those guys they're troopers. They are the fireman squad, the fire department. They're just eating stuff up and keeping things alive.
Absolutely, they are. 100% agree.
Good stuff.
Well, that's really going to do it for us here today. One last thing we can touch on really quick before we go. All-Star voting is live. You can vote for your Colorado Rockies to be in the All-Star game. Skyler, on your ballot, you can include pitchers as well. Who would you have as Rockies representatives for the All-Star game?
Elias Diaz, catcher. We need a real man, not that 15-year-old looking weirdo Will Smith. And big booty Sean Murphy. He's fine. You can do with him, but vote for Elias Diaz. And then I'll throw Ryan McMahon on there at third base. He's not going to win because we know who will, but still, I'd give him some love. And then pitchers wise, we I think we just talked about him, like not Tyler Kinley. He's not back yet. Jake Bird, Brent Suter, Justin Lawrence, any of those three guys would be good as relievers. And I think it was Mike Petriello, whatever his name is. He had a kind of a mock one at one point, and he had Kyle Freeland as one of his all-stars. And so I will say that too. K-Free. Because he's had a solid year.
Yeah,
despite that 4-7 record.
Kyle's been interesting because one, he's getting no run support. Over his last 4 road starts, I believe, he's gotten 0 runs of support. So that's a big issue. And he's had the 2 blow-ups. Neither of those were good. But outside of those, he's been very good.
Mm-hmm.
On my ballot, I think definitely Elias Diaz. I'm going to throw the wild card in there. I think Ezequiel Tovar, if he continues to play like he is, could have a realistic shot.
Yeah. Or at least get some votes.
And I definitely agree with you on Ryan McMahon as well, where he can probably get some votes as well. Same trio of relievers, and then honestly, I pretty much agree with everybody you mentioned. I'm just adding in Ezequiel Tovar there.
Yeah, and maybe Profar as an honorable mention. That because despite his numbers, he did have that gigantic on base streak.
Was it? Is it 37 games?
Yeah, I think so. So that's like what 7th or 8th in franchise history. So he's doing some things, but yeah, I think we're slim pickings, and I think we just gushed on everybody that probably would end up on there.
Pretty much. And, if we're being realistic, the Rockies are probably going to have another year where they only have one all-star, and it's the one that gets decided on by the coaches and players. So,
yeah. And the league,
we'll see. But you can help if you go out and vote for guys like Elias Diaz on your ballot. You can vote 5 times a day. So,
get out the vote.
Chop, chop.
We'll have to start our campaigning on the Twitter.
Pokemon, go to the polls.
Oh no, that lost her the election.
I don't think that was it, but it certainly didn't help.
It certainly didn't help.
Which one of us is going to Howard Dean scream?
Ah!
Now that lost him the election.
Or we can just start the mudslinging on Twitter towards Will Smith, but it'll just be very baseless things that aren't based on his stats.
He smells.
He plays for the Dodgers, so
that's enough reason to.
That's enough reason not to vote for him. Anyways,
alrighty, Skyler, where can the folks find you at?
You can find me on the Twitters at @sideline_crowd, and then always over there on purplerow.com, writing Wednesday rock piles.
Excellent. And you can find me at Evan_Lang27 on Twitter. I would love to hear from you. You can also find me on purplerow.com writing the Thursday rock piles. You can hit us up at Rocky Mountain Rooftop. That's at ROCKYMTN Rooftop on Twitter, the official Twitter account of Rocky Mountain Rooftop, as well as at Altitude Effect for this specific show. Really appreciate you guys sticking with us here. We've had the growing pains with the new network and everything like that, but you guys are still coming to tune in and listen every week, whether it's just Skyler like it was last week or listening to my terrible sounding voice this week. So we really appreciate you guys, and thank you so much for listening every week.
Indeed. Yeah, we always appreciate all the support. And like we said, if you want to go buy t-shirts, that goes towards supporting us even more. Share this with your friends. Listen to it 1 billion times. Do something.
It's a pretty nice shirt, too.
Indeed. And hopefully we can figure out some other designs.
I have a couple in mind.
And to those 127 people that listened to the solo episode, thank you very much and for coming back.
Thank you for not driving. Thank you for having that not drive you away from the show.
Yeah.
I don't know. I thought it was a good episode. I enjoyed it. I thought you did a good job.
Gracias.
Alrighty. Well, that's going to do it for us this week here on Affected for Altitude. I am tired and need to go lie down because I'm still quite sick. So, Skyler, how about you hit him with it?
Farewell.
Thanks, everybody.